Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, Johnny.
So I'd like everyone to stand. I'd like to start with a chant of some kind. Everyone just stand up real quickly. Stand up. Yes. Repeat after me this chant. And by the way, what I get to do, I work with pro athletes, CEOs, and high achievers, and I help them experience success by viewing their life through the lens of a story so they flourish in what matters most. So that's what I get to do. So here's the chant. Ready? Let's start this way. Success.
Success
is hard work.
is hard work.
Success
Success
is hard work.
is hard work.
Success
Success
is worth the work.
is worth the work.
And I can
And I can
do the work.
do the
All right,
work.
say it like you really believe it at whatever time it is in Orlando. Success
Success
is hard work.
is hard work.
Success
Success
is hard work.
is hard work.
Success
Success
is worth the work.
is worth the work.
And I can
And I can
do the work.
do the work.
High five, fist bump the person next to you. I got that. You may be seated. So success is all that. Success, being successful personally, professionally, is hard work. It is hard work. It is worth the work, and it takes diligence to do the work. But that work first starts with understanding your life as a story. That every day your life is telling a story. It's telling a story professionally, it's telling a story in your friendships, in your family, in your faith, in your fitness, in your faith, in your finances, in your fun, in all the major areas of your life. It's telling a story. And your story unfolds in 3D. We're going to talk about that. Your story unfolds in a dream. You got to know your story. It's a design. You got to align your story personally, professionally, and destiny. You got to master your story personally, professionally. And here's the deal: none of us bump into. You don't drift to a great personal, professional story. It happens intentionally. And that's when I think about my own story and my own life. And looking at this idea of my life through the lens of a story, that if you're not intentional about writing your story, others will write one for you. Yeah. And I can go back even to PS 220 in 6th grade with Mrs. Stone, who I thought she was really hot, she was really, really cute. And she called us to the blackboard, myself, Solomon Minzer, and Bruce Moskowitz. She called us to the blackboard, and we had to reduce the fractions. To this day, I don't know what the answer to those questions was she was giving me. And so Solomon finishes answering the questions to the reducing the fractions. Bruce finishes, and I'm at the blackboard with 30 of my peers looking at me, and I'm throwing numbers together, hoping to hit the lottery, hoping to hit the jackpot. And Ms. Stone is sitting right over there, and she looks at me and says, "Johnny Parker, you don't belong in this class." That shame became the backdrop, became the soundtrack of my story, personally and professionally. Because what happened was this. Every time I came into a situation with someone, in a relationship, personally and professionally, whenever you would question my competence, I would get angry. You talk about emotional intelligence. And so you have to know your story. And you have to know your story in terms of what's the dream that you have for your life. And if you don't know that story, others will shape one for you. And what happens is this. It's easy for you to take where there's been shame in your story or dysfunction in your story, personally, professionally, and if you try to connect with someone, I have my wife up here for a moment, sweetheart, I want you to come up here, and you try to connect with someone personally or professionally. It's my wife of nearly 30 years, going on 30 years of marriage. You try to connect with someone, and whatever stuff is going on in terms of your story, they get your stuff, and you get their stuff. You get their stuff. And so you have to be extremely emotionally intelligent and be aware of what's going on in your story and begin to really get intentional about what's the dream of my life. And not allow someone else. No one gets the right, R-I-G-H-T, to write, W-R-I-T-E, your story. And every day your life is telling a story. Your story will either be triumphant or tragic. And in all of our stories, there are going to be characters like Mrs. Stone and others who will come alongside, and if you don't know the story, they will write one for you. So what's the dream? I wasn't raised to dream. I'm a New Yorker and grew up in the 70s, 60s and 70s, I wasn't raised to dream. It wasn't until I got to 35 years old that I began to give myself permission to dream. Of course, we know the one man who tells the story about the greatest dream is Dr. King. I don't know if you know the story, but the day he gave the I Have a Dream speech, Mahalia Jackson was on the stage. Dr. King had a speechwriter. He spoke the first 7 lines of the I Have a Dream that was scripted. Mahalia Jackson on the stage said to him, "Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream. Tell him about the dream, Martin. Tell him about the dream." The story goes that Dr. King pushed his nose to the side and just began to speak from his heart about the dream of what he saw, what he wanted for the country, what he wanted for America, what he wanted for his children. What's your dream? Every day it's important for you to ask yourself 3 questions. Who am I? What do I want? And why do I want it? I also teach at Johns Hopkins. I teach what's called positive psychology at Johns Hopkins. And I have all my students do this exercise. It's called savoring. Savoring is when you relish and cherish a moment. And so I have them do an exercise, I call it Back to the Future, where you write to the past, but you write to the past from the perspective of having already fulfilled and accomplished it. So if it's graduating, you would write down May 15th, 2020, I'm walking across the stage, I've completed my master's program. So I challenge you and encourage you, do a savoring exercise of some kind, where you write to someone near and dear to you, and write that letter, and write it in the past tense from the perspective of having already achieved it. So you have to first dream and know your story. And then you have to design and align your story. Align your story around some really, really strong values and virtues. Align your story around the idea of what I call championing generosity, of leaving others better off than how you found them. That's a mindset of how do you leave others in your personal life, in your professional life. And you want to stay with that narrative because the same values that are true at work are true in your family. I have trust in my marriage. I have trust in my team at work. I have core values in my family and my marriage. I have core values in my family, in my team at work. I have emotional intelligence in my marriage. I have emotional intelligence in my team at work. We have legacy and culture and in our family and our marriage. The same is true at work. So I challenge this notion of life-work balance. It's life-work blending with the design around leaving others better off than how you found them. That's a great story. I challenge you, encourage you, have that mindset. How will I leave others better off than how I found them today? Make it a point that when you first meet someone, within the first minute or so, what can you say to affirm them? What can you say to inspire them? Really inspire them, not just on their external, but their character. And then, this idea of aligning your story. In every story, there's support cast. None of us can know ourselves, grow ourselves by ourselves. You gotta have a team. You have to have a support cast. And you have to give permission, like you go to a play, you go to a theater, and at the play, there's a front stage. Your life is a front stage, there's a public life. But then there's a backstage behind the curtains, and there's a private life. Backstage is the true intent, and the true heart is the truest you. It's your true self. The front stage in business and professional life, it's technology, it's strategy, it's profitability, it's all those things that matters. But the backstage, how you show up, everyone doesn't get a pass to go in your backstage. But you better have a few good, like the Marines, a few good men, a few good women that you give access to your backstage. It's called your support cast. You can't know yourself, grow yourself by yourself, personally or professionally. Who are the people in your backstage? And again, in my personal life and my professional life, I've had to turn the page on depression. And I'm in this field, and I've worked in marriage as a marriage and family therapist, and written several books. But I got stuck because I wasn't eating my own cooking. Because in my backstage for many years, I was isolated. Even the woman that I loved, I wasn't allowing her in the backstage. I wasn't allowing anyone in the backstage. And so what happens is your story looks something like this. You have life, you have stress, you have isolation, you have dysfunction. You have life, another way to look at it, you have life, you have stress, you have a support cast, you have community, you have health, and you have functionality. The most dangerous thing, personally, professionally, is to go in your career and not have a few good people, a few good men, a few good women who are in your backstage. And as again, I got stuck in depression and panic attacks because I was unwilling to be vulnerable about what was going on in the backstage. I couldn't get on a plane without sharing with my wife, honey, I need you to go with me or I'm going to turn this play out. Who's in your backstage personally, professionally? Who helps you live the best version of yourself personally and professionally? That's your support cast. And every day, one of the things that I encourage you to do is one of those practical things you can do. And I've been doing it for over 30 years. I keep a journal. I have all my students journal their story. I have them identify emotions because, again, this is challenging, especially for males, in terms of their emotional neighborhoods. And we go through emotional neighborhoods, all of us, males and females, in our story. There's anger avenue, there's anxiety avenue, there's bitterness boulevard, there's confused court, there's depression drive, there's lonely lane, there's pity place, stressful street, tired tourist, and worried way. And the challenge is when you go in those emotional neighborhoods, personally and professionally. The challenge is when you go in those neighborhoods, park the car, build the house, and hang out there. That's when the freaks come out of that. Yeah. And so, understanding this need around designing your story around having a support cast. People who help you live the best version of yourself. Design. And thirdly, destiny. You master your story. You master your story. Gloria, why don't you come up here from Cornell? You master your story. I want Gloria to illustrate this with me. So, we have, yeah, come on the stage, bro. Yes, come on the stage. Give it up. Yeah, give it up to Gloria. So what happens? I get brought in a lot of times because someone's got promoted on a team organization to help make money or save money, and then they get this team and they're terrible with people. Okay? And everything at the C-suite level is all behavioral. It's not front stage, not the typical stuff. You get brought in because they're terrible with people. They're great and well-trained, but they're terrible with people. And so this idea of culture happens. Culture is simply this, the way things are done around here. And you have to start first with a healthy me to be a strong me team or culture. It starts with listening. Okay? And so, Gloria, so I want you, here's your cup in the middle, and I want you to put this cup in the middle, in the center.
Is this like a trick? Is this like a trick?
No, it's not a trick. It's just yeah, there you go. All right, take the time. Put it back in the center. I like that. You know what you just did? And this wasn't scripted. Because what we're doing here is this. If you don't know your story, aligning it, designing it, dreaming it, what happens is this. You always want to come back to center. And if you don't know your story, what happens is this. People move you off center. Life moves you off center. Stuff happens, and you get moved off center. And oftentimes, you don't know what the culture is anymore. You don't know why you work anymore. Your personal culture and the vision for the organization that you work, they're not in coherence. And so, it's all over the place. What you just did is you took it and you said, you know what? You don't get the right to move my story. You don't get the right to define this story. No, I didn't know you were going to do that either. It was perfect. It was perfect. It was perfect. But what you did was, this is who I am. I'm not this. I'm not this. But in great teams, you have to be intentional. Ritz Carlton every day does a huddle where they look at and they ask the question, what are our values, what are our mission? And guess what? They tell a story about what happened at Ritz Carlton in Tucson, Arizona, and how it connects with the mission and vision and story. What's your story? How will you be intentional about your story? You don't drift to your story. Give Gloria a hand. Thank you, Gloria. You don't bump into it. It's your dream. What's your dream? Your day starts backstage. It definitely starts with you. It starts with having a meeting with you. And so it starts with this. Having a pledge, where you pledge every day before you start. And you write the story backstage. I pledge today to show up and be physically healthy, to rest my body, to feed my body the nutrients that it needs to be healthy. I pledge today emotionally to show up today, to be emotionally intelligent and aware and be present. I pledge today relationally to leave others better off. That I'd be more interested in hearing your story than trying to impress you with mine. Today I pledge to show up and be mentally focused, to be mindful and lead and live and love from a place of mindfulness mentally. And then today I pledge spiritually to seek meaning, to seek real purpose, to seek real fulfillment and engagement. Make that your pledge. Again, your success and your story is hard work. It is hard work backstage. It's hard work. It's worth the work. Continue.